All right, so today, chapter 5, we're going to cover methods. You're pretty familiar with methods already. They were called modules and functions in Python when we were in PLAT 101. But in Java, everything is called methods. So both modules and functions, they will be called just one word, methods. And they work the same way. Literally nothing is different from Python to Java. The only thing is the syntax. The syntax is very different, and that's the one thing that we're going to focus heavy on today. So, as always, methods. Let's do a little refresher on those. We use them to just break down our large program into smaller pieces of code, smaller pieces of little functions that are going to work for us and do something useful for us. And it's called divide and conquer in programming terms when you break down a larger program into smaller pieces. Now, of course, methods will simplify your program and is going to introduce the reusing of code for us. And we know that code reuse is very helpful because you're not going to be rewriting the same thing over and over again. So methods, with the help of methods, we're just going to make our life easier. Now, the two different types in Java, so the same way how Python has modules and functions, it's the same way here, but they're called void methods, and void methods are those that do not return anything, which is the word void stands for, like nothingness. So a method that's not going to return anything to you, they're just going to perform some task and then terminate, is called a void method. And then the other type is a value returning method, and it's literally in the name. It's going to return some value back to your program. So value returning is a function in Python, and a void method is a module in Python, if that's easier to understand. For example, this one is just going to print hi. It's not going to return anything to us, right? And then this statement right here and this module, this method parse int, is going to take this 700 that is, for now, it's a string because we know that everything that's in quotation is a string, and it's going to translate it into an integer, and it's going to return this value 700 as an integer back to our program. All right, same idea. When we're creating a method, we need a header and a body. Nothing changes here. Your method will be able to take in arguments, so we will need parameters for those. Again, nothing too complicated, but this is how our method will look like in Java. So this is going to be our header, the first line, our header, and I will go and explain every single part of this. Then curly braces, obviously, they're everywhere in Java. And then whatever inside is those curly braces, including those curly braces, is called the body of your method. Now, let's look at the header and the parts of our header. So these two I'll call method modifiers. So remember how we talked about public and private? So this is just going to define the scope. And we know that we should make our methods public. Whenever we our last chapter of PLD 101, we talked about this public versus private. And whenever we're creating a class and an object, we should make the variables of that object private, and the methods should be public. So in this case, you will probably only see public methods in this class, but this is why public is here. We need to specify who can access this method. So in this case, public, everybody can access this method. Then static just means that nothing's going to be changed, like it's going to stay as it is. And then void is your return type. So void just means that we are not returning anything. So this method will just do something for us, but it doesn't have to return anything back to us. Then our method name, and then the parentheses. So nothing too complicated in the header. Let's see. Yes, and this is just our body right here. This whole thing is considered the body of our method. Now let's look a little bit closer. As I said, public means your method will be publicly available. to any code that's outside of the class. Then static means that this method belongs to a certain class and not a specific object. Now, return type will be either void or it can be a data type. So string, integer, float, double, remember all of those data types we covered before. Instead of void, you could see like integer, for example, and that would mean that your method will return some value that is an integer back to you. Method name, you can put whatever name you want for that method, but it should be descriptive. Again, the same coding rules apply here too. And then parentheses, if you have if your method doesn't need any parameters or any arguments, then they are empty. However, I'll show you later how to use the parentheses if we have to pass something to our method. Let's see. Your method will execute only when it is called, so you will have to call it. This is how you would call this method right here. You would just put display message parentheses and a semicolon in the end. Message should always be documented. Yeah, documentation, we've talked about this. There's a little video on Javadoc comments, and Javadoc comments are specifically for documenting your program in an HTML file. And if you're interested in that, you can go back and see what those are. But you should always comment what your method is doing and what parameters it accepts, either 0 parameters or certain things. And you should just explain what it's doing, why you wrote it, and just the purpose of your method. All right. Yeah, so here we are with the values that are sent into a method. So we call them arguments. And in this case, str is going to be our argument. String, some sort of string that we're passing is going to be our argument. So everything that's inside of the parentheses is an argument. Yeah, so let's look at this one. We have our public static void display value integer num. So let's go through each of these things. So public, what does public tell us? Public tells us that this method is available to everybody who wants to use it. Now, static just means that it belongs to a certain class. Void is going to mean that we are not returning anything with this method, no value is being returned. Then this is our name, display value. And here we're specifying that this method is going to take a parameter that is a variable num that is an integer. So this is all there is inside of the parentheses. And then whenever we actually call this method, you can see that we're passing a 5, right? So display value, we're passing a 5, and that 5 will automatically know that it needs to go right here. And then after this, let's see where the num is. System.out.print, the value is, oh, here's our num. So that 5 will go right here, and then after that, it will know exactly where it needs to go. And this method will just display the value is 5. If you put any other number in here, for example 10, your method will display your value is 10. So whatever you put inside of the parentheses, it will know exactly where to go if you have written your method the right way. Yeah, okay. You have to make sure that your parameters and whatever you're passing is the same data type. So for example, this one only accepts integers. If you have tried to pass 10.0, for example, this is a double. This is not an integer. Remember that our integers are only whole numbers without the decimal. So if you have tried to pass 10.0, this would throw an error. 5.0 also would throw an error. So anything that is not an integer, your computer would be very angry at you, and it would tell you that there is an error and you need to fix it. because it cannot convert a double to an integer. This is not Python, this is Java. Java is a very strictly typed language. So you just have to pay attention to that and make sure that if you get some sort of errors, just make sure that you're using the same data types. Yeah, also, obviously, the way, the order of your arguments matters a lot. In this case, we have, well, in this case, it doesn't really matter in this certain method, but just in general, 5, if you're putting 5 in the first place, it will go in here. It will go into num1. And then 10, since it's the second number that we're passing, it will go into num2. Then after that, we're just creating a variable called double, and then what our sum is doing is taking num1 and adding num2 to it. However, for example, if instead of a plus, it would be a, right, like divide sign, we would have our result would be 1/2, right? 5 divided by 10 would be 1/2. However, if we flip them, 10 and 5, our result would be 2. So this is why it's very important for you to know the order of your parameters, because just by flipping these, we can get 2 different results here. Arguments are passed by value, object reference. Okay, yeah, you can pass an object reference. Well, it's the same thing. It's the same thing as passing your regular arguments. So as you can see here, we are passing a double and some sort of variable. In this case is num1, so double num1, that's what we're passing. And in this case, we're passing string str. And we know that our strings are objects, and doubles and integers are data types, so it's a little bit different, but there is a whole video on the difference of objects and data types. But in this specific case, you need to know that passing a reference of an object works the same way as passing a data type variable. So nothing's gonna be different. Give me a second. All right, we know that our strings are immutable, so that just means that we cannot change the strings. So whatever we have in a string here, we cannot change it to with any methods. So you have Joe, you're gonna have Joe no matter how hard you try to change that variable, unless you assign a completely new different variable to your variable string, to value to your variable string. So in this case, variable holds address. Let me see. My cat, he's just going crazy today. I apologize.
It's fine.
All right, let's see. Both variables. Yeah, here is how you would document your parameters in your whenever you creating your methods. If you wanted to use java.comments, and it would just be, yeah, see, like, what are you doing? You would just use @param, which just stands for a parameter. And this is the general format of documenting that. You would put @param, then the name of your parameter, and then a brief description of what that parameter holds, what that parameter is doing. Local variables. Well, we know that local variables, they work the same way as in Python. So whatever you create inside of the method, it's not visible to any code that's outside of your method. So your local variables, they do not exist to your code that is outside. That's all you need to know. To return a value from a method, we use the same word, keyword return. Nothing is very much different from Python. Remember, in Python, we also use the return. The only difference is that you have to put a semicolon at the end of your return statement. And see, this is the return type right here, integer. So this method looks the same way, but instead of void right here, we have integer. We're specifying what type of value we are gonna return to our program. And in this case, this method will take it has two parameters, integer num1, integer num2. Then we're creating a local variable called integer result. Then our result equals num1 plus num2, and then we are returning the result. So whatever we're going to pass here, we're going to add those two values together, and then we're going to return the result of that expression. In this case, you can see here, we're passing 20 and we're passing 40. Then the calculation will result in 60, and we're going to return 60. 60 is going to be stored in this total right here. Return, same idea. Return works the same way when you're documenting it, the same way as your parameter, and you just put return and you put the description of what you are returning, what type of value, why you're returning it, just a brief little description. You can also return a Boolean value. It's not forbidden. So all you have to do is just specify that you want to return a Boolean, and remember that Boolean can only hold true or false. So you can create your own Boolean methods. And returning a reference to a string. Yeah, same idea with here. As you can see, we're passing John and Martin to our public static string method, which means that string, we're going to return a string back to our main program. And in this case, we're passing John and Martin. And then what we're doing, we're adding those two values together, so which is going to result in John Martin being returned back to your customer name. Problem solving. All right, and let me show you. Let's write our own methods. All right, so I already have the class. Let's put public in front. Public class in class, then our main definition right here, nothing too complicated. And let's write our first method that's just gonna return something like, let's try
I can't see
public.
what you're typing.
Oh, my bad. I always forget to do that. All right.
Okay.
Let's create a method that's gonna, for example, print something for us. Public void print out. Then this should be empty, and system.out.print. And we're gonna print hello. Oh, wrong button. All right, we're gonna print hello. Let me. All right, so let's see. And then we should just be able to call it print out. Let's see if that's gonna work. Oh no, that throws an error. Let's put it this way. See, it's just gonna print us hello. So what I did right here, you can see that I put this method on top of our main. I'm pretty sure I should be able to define this inside of our main, but the only difference would be public void print out is that I will have to get rid of static. Let me see if I'm correct on that one. Hello. And if you want to comment like the whole thing, this is how I do it. You put a slash double star, and then at the end you put 1 star and a slash. And this whole thing is going to be commented out. All right, now let's try and see. Now that also throws an error. Okay. Static. Okay, yeah, that it does not like that. Okay, so you have to define your methods outside of your main because your main is considered its own method, right? Because as we can see here, it has the same things as this definition right here. The only difference is that the inside, and we will have a lecture explaining what this means. I don't want to put that information in your head right now. But we have public static void print out, and then we're just printing a string hello. However, for example, if we want to let's try creating a method that is going to return something back to us. So again, we have to put public, we have to put static, and then let's return an integer. For example, integer number. And after that, let's create a local variable called integer num. Let's make it equal to 5 and then return num. So this method, in theory, should return this integer 5 back to us when it's called. And let's see, system.out.println. So this is just gonna print something for us. And integer num, let's try calling this method and see what happens. See, we just printed 5 right here. So if we change this number to anything else, for example, 15, should be printing 15 for us. Hello 15 works fine. And now let's try. So we've created one that doesn't return anything. This one doesn't return anything to us. Now this method will return something to us. It's going to return whatever we define right here as our local variable. Now let's try to write a method that is going to take a parameter. Right? For example, let's do a string one because we already have an integer one. So what I'm doing, I'm typing public static and then that I want to return a string. And for example, let's do my name. And then I want this to take a argument. I want this to have a parameter, and our parameter should be a string. And for example, the name of your parameter shouldn't really matter, but let's do first name. First name is going to be our parameter. And what this method is going to do for us, it's gonna take that first name. So we need to create, let's just say that it's gonna print out whatever we pass as a parameter to this method. In this case, it's first name. And let's say your first name is, and then we have to put a plus because it's Java, first name. So this should return, this should print your first name is, actually no, let's do a void one. All right, because I just realized that I'm putting system.out.print and that will not return anything to us. This will just print something on the screen. So that's why I changed the type to void. However, I just want to show you guys how to use it, how to create your own method with parameters. So in this case, if we call my name, and as an argument, I want to pass Sonia to it. This should print your first name is Sonia. Let's see. There it is. Your first name is Sonia. So this value knows exactly where it's going to because we are specifying that we're using this method right here called my name. So what your compiler will do is going to go back and it's going to look through all of the methods that you have and find the one that it's looking for. In this case, it's my name. So it's going to go print out, no, number, not the one, my name. Oh, that's the one that we need. So it's going to look at this method and then it's going to see, am I returning anything? And we have a void, so we're not returning anything. And then it will look, am I taking any arguments? And in this case, yes, we are taking a string. Then it will look right here and it will see, am I passing a string? Yes, I am passing a string. I am passing a string Sonia. And then this string Sonia right now is going to be located in this variable first name in this local variable. And after that, it's going to look and see, am I using this variable anywhere else? And then it's going to go system.out.print your first name. Oh, here it is. Here's where we are using our variable first name. And then it's just gonna do whatever inside of that of your body. In this case, we're just printing out your first name is with whatever we passed here. In this case, it's Sonia. If you put anything else, for example, Alexander, it's gonna print your first name as Alexander. So nothing too complicated. Whatever you pass, even if it doesn't make sense, it doesn't have to make sense. The only thing that it cares about is that you're gonna send a certain value, and then it's gonna perform whatever inside of this value right here. And in this case, we are just printing anything that we are passing, even though I don't know, I've never met a person with the first name Tomato, but you know, your computer does not care about making sense. It only cares about doing what exactly you're telling it to do.
Mhm.
Yeah, so if you guys have any other questions,